When he modifies his tone, the camera is already rolling. Thus far, seems to be simply another recap, another bizarre internet circumstance. The mood of the room quickly changes. His eyes narrow, his shoulders tilt forward, and he addresses her rather than the audience. Tamar, not as a stranger, nor as a headline, as someone he used to consider a buddy. After a short while, do you know what actually occurred to you? No, I'm not. Or what are you able to discuss? I don't know what actually happened, but I can talk about it. You stop long enough to create an uncomfortable quiet. He gets there and tells you outright that you were a goddamn bald-headed, bold-faced liar. He answers coolly. On social media, the video freezes in that frame. His eyes were closed with a mixture of exhaustion and pain, and his jaw was rigid. The audio from Tamar's own interview, in which she says she doesn't know what actually happened to her that night, other than that she went to a friend's birthday party and gave a speech, is repeatedly looped, stitched, slowed down, and rewinded by fans. A birthday celebration for a pal. One night, two stories, and a developing understanding that they cannot both be true in the same manner. On the one hand, Tamar quietly informs L'Oreal that she doesn't know exactly what happened, dismissing the specifics as if they were too hazy to remember. But he claims that Funky's retracing every meal, drive, and step creates a timeline that illustrates the narrative. The work she is producing is both expertly written and lacking. His unhappiness seems too particular and detailed to be written off as a random internet mess. So, as the video becomes viral, so do the interpretations. Some viewers claim that the mask comes off at this point. Some claim that he is lying and that his emotions are warping the facts. A more serious issue begins to emerge somewhere around the middle. Is Tamar refuting his narrative or accidentally acknowledging the information she left out when she refers to that night as a birthday celebration she hosted? Because below the jokes, memes, and drags, one unsettling idea keeps coming up in the comments. Why does his account seem so accurate if she truly can't recall what happened? People's perceptions of the video change as soon as he speaks. What started out as a heated public altercation now appears to be the first instance of a bigger case where facts and feelings suddenly collide. Instead of cooperating, the camera captures each his face moved. This rage isn't ostentatious. Instead, it's something more profound that developed over time and was carried by him long before he gained notoriety. The man and his homeboy are frozen as the video reaches this point. All right, this is the third time that you and I have unexpectedly hung out. Mendeecees is on his way. All right, you may now create her anything you want. The internet as he lets out a single breath to regain his balance. It happens when he tells her what Tamar said, apparently evaluating the evidence. Tamar claims she has no idea what actually occurred to her. She talks about a supposedly frightening night in an interview that is almost too serene for someone. She doesn't recoil. Her voice is uninterrupted. She simply states it. Pies is also viewed by many as either admirable or suspicious. He believes it to be the latter. His face becomes tense as soon as they play the lyrics. He sees this as manipulation rather than amnesia. A story is beginning to take shape, and he starts the painstaking, laborious examination of what that evening they both said. It's neither a shocking charge nor a remarkable conspiracy. Instead, it's just his conception of a timeline that he says she is always changing. And what draws readers into the narrative is the ferocity of that conflict. He clarifies that she wasn't planning a birthday celebration for him. He claims that she called him to inquire about what was available in his area because she and her pals were just hungry. He states unequivocally that he recommended a restaurant. They concurred, and he thought she was performing on camera rather than making an exaggerated move. It was the real reason for the occasion. His narrative has a subtle vitality to it. It wasn't neither impatient nor motivated. It would be more like an investigator examining a crime scene he had seen before. The phone call, the closed eateries, the familiar faces, Zoe's arrival, and feel of the anticipated thrill seems intentional. The time frame has changed, but nothing out of the ordinary as of yet. He explains how Mendes and his friend got to the unexpectedly. The restaurant was not included in the initial proposal. Even if he carefully selects his remarks, it's clear that this wasn't a coincidence. This was not a casual visit. This was prearranged. The internet quickly picks up on that point. Some commenters take their time. Watch the video to analyze the way he speaks unexpected things, the pauses and the phrasing. Some see this as jealousy. Others perceive it as someone who saw a pattern long before it was made public. Additionally, a growing number of viewers believe that this is the first significant breach in Tamar's story, because in this interview with L'Oreal, it's claimed to have woken up in a pool of blood and nearly died after telling the world that she had organized a party. You mentioned that you were at home with David or someone else when they said, "We need to call an ambulance," and you were for him. He responded by outlining all the reasons that wasn't true. When he explains how he didn't, the discrepancy between their accounts produced its own form of proof. Only dragged himself to the next site because the group persisted despite his desire to go there. The volume increases. The man is uncomfortable in the relationship that I had you end. Monday's in front of me. All right, it doesn't sound like he's eager to celebrate while you're sitting on your booty shorts in the music video. It sounds like someone who was uncomfortable. But was that a loss for words? Additionally, more individuals paused the video at one time than at any other. According to Tamar, she threw a birthday party for a buddy. His reaction to this section is nearly forensic. He discusses the rationale behind this assertion. Annoys him. It's hardly a harmless exaggeration, in his opinion. It's a ruse to deflect attention, elicit sympathy, and create the idea that he mistreated her on a night when she had intended to drive home since you were sitting on you guys were kissing on his lap in that fucking Uber. All right. And I was really uncomfortable. All right, regardless of whether or not viewers agree with him. One thing is evident if anyone knows who happened and what. Tamar's phrasing allows her interpretations that she may not have intended, because when she says, I gave a friend a birthday party, she presents herself as the giver. In exchange, the victim was tricked. The encouraging buddy who was offended by the individual, she paid tribute. Additionally, it's an intriguing tale in and of itself. However, the story ceases to be a story as soon as his version walks into the room. There's a dispute. The viewer has to decide between two irreconcilable truths and two contradictory timelines. At this point, the story starts to get suspenseful not because of danger or violence, but rather because of uncertainty, the kind that causes you to doubt your objectives, choices, and recollections, the kind that communicates the notion that quiet is more powerful than words. He then intensifies the entire process by adding a layer of emotional pain. He acknowledges his desire for things to return to their previous state. He acknowledges that he did not want any of this to occur. He acknowledges that he is mourning the loss of a friendship he once cherished. But the most unnerving aspect of it all is the vulnerability, because when someone shows such a degree of disapproval, it is more challenging to disregard them as merely irresponsible or malevolent. On the internet, theories start to surface. It's said that Tamar is a sidestepper. He's overreacting, according to some. Some people think that each of them is speaking the truth as they perceive it, and that the true narrative is found somewhere where those truths converge. But the subsequent discovery that the sentence about feeling nervous completely alters the tone. He doesn't make any accusations while observing Tamar and Mendeecees' interactions. He makes no factual claims. He just expresses the uneasiness that results from noticing something subtle. It's unsaid or impossible to prove, yet impossible to ignore. Suddenly, there are a ton of inquiries in the comment section. Something Tamar did not respond to throughout the interview. The emotional weight in his voice implies that there is more to the narrative than either of them. Not because he explicitly accused her, wishes to acknowledge. When he relates that unease to the narrative, he claims that her public speech was intended to portray him as the antagonist, because the plot has nothing to do with both timelines if they are true on their own. The stakes are significantly higher with a birthday party. It has to do with perception, accountability, and the ability to tell a story before the other person speaks. However, everything is now decided by one query. Did Tamar simplify the narrative in order to defend herself? Or did she unintentionally divulge more than she meant to? That uncertainty is still heavy and unsolved. The night of the event starts to turn into something far more complicated than a simple miscommunication. The entire tone of the video changes when the pain is brought up. The unsaid dynamics in the room are more important than just two conflicting stories. Tamar, the entire problem with the entire situation was that you can't go around causing media frenzy. Dynamics that evening in media frenzy. Dynamics that evening in the room, the brief looks that some claim to have witnessed, as well as the ways some items align themselves a bit too perfectly when placed next to one another. Because he does not take lightly his claim that he was never comfortable with Tamar and Mendeecees' encounters. The internet pauses every frame of the period he recounts, searching for significance even when it isn't supplied. There's a weight to it. Viewers focus on the tension between the lines in online slow-motion edits made by hobbyists, suggesting that this was a pattern rather than an individual incidence. There is no clear statement made. On its own, there is no proof. Even so, the hint is sufficient to spark conjecture, and one footage continues to appear after that. He acknowledges that he feels uneasy about Tamar and Mandy's relationship. Although it's brief, the delivery gives the impression that someone has been holding something for the past 4 months. The internet seizes that opportunity, toweth it, constructing threads that attempt to align with Tamar's ambiguous claims that he is unaware of what transpired that evening. Rumor has it that the more people compare the interviews, the greater the disparity between what she says and what he depicts begin to appear in specific places. He discusses the party's travels, highlighting his hesitation at each stop. The details, restaurants closing and pals choosing where to go next. However, you're not going to sit there looking foolish on L'Oreal's podcast and act as though you recently had a friend who mistreated you. You were simply done incorrectly. Because if someone recommends a different location, his pause becomes a signal in and of itself, even though they are not particularly striking on their own. He was not interested in staying up late. He declined to change roles. He wouldn't get out of his car. He believed that she, in particular, and the group had forced him to make every choice. This is significant because it portrays the remainder of the evening as something he was forced to do. Something that didn't feel right at first, rather than as a celebration. A fresh tension is created by that subtle change in tone. Before daylight had arrived, was Tamar attempting to set up a story. Then he brings up the scene that drives everyone insane. The vehicle ride, the dynamic, not the destination, but within that vehicle. He claims that when they arrived to her house, Tamar wasn't seated by herself in the back seat. She wasn't, since they were aware that we had been together the previous evening. 7,000 people were waiting for me to explain what had transpired. I don't know what happened to the lady, I said, adding, "Baby, I went home." That woman headed upstairs. After a challenging night, she was only partially sleeping. She was seated on Mandy's lap, he said, and they were kissing. The internet goes crazy over that tidbit because, earlier in the chronology, she suggested that she hardly knew him by characterizing their relationship as harmless, limited, and informal. However, someone who claims to have been in the same car and witnessed the interaction from a few inches away paints a quite different picture. Not from a stranger or a blog. Fans start analyzing motives in front of the camera at this point. Why would she minimize the relationship? If the atmosphere in the car suggested different, why would she depict the evening as a celebration for a friend? Moreover, given the circumstances, why would she say she didn't know what happened? Supposedly intimate nature of the preceding events. Although the transcript doesn't answer any of these queries, their very existence speaks louder than any confirmation. He did not, however, accuse her of any misconduct in relation to what transpired above. He doesn't say anything definitive. Rather, he concentrates on his reasons. He thought they needed privacy, so he didn't accompany her upstairs. He didn't seem to be as important to the evening as whatever was happening between them. This distinction turns into a pivotal moment in the story. However, she openly built around him once he discloses that he was excluded from the plot. Viewers begin to wonder if her interview was intended to provide clarification or if it was meant to hide something very different. This draws attention to the section of the transcript that seems to be more evidence than analysis. Upon seeing them in the car, he made the decision to return home. He doesn't yell. He is not an inventor. He just expresses his choice. Returned to his home. She headed upstairs. He wasn't present. He had no idea what came next. The public's presumptions about his involvement are challenged by that revelation, which is what drives the internet ahead. People blamed him when she claimed on the internet that she was hurt when she woke up. He was dragged by others. He was accused by others. But he claims that none of that occurred while he was there. A new emotional depth emerges when he talks about being implicated but not present. He is bemoaning the fact that the fiction selected him as a villain rather than only defending himself. Before he could answer, at this point, viewers inadvertently start to notice Tamar's performance flaws, because consistency is more important to storytelling than facts. As a result, viewers find it more difficult to reconcile someone who says she doesn't know what happened with someone else, providing a detailed timeline that conflicts with her account of what happened that evening. Next are the specifics of the phone talks at V12. He was frequently questioned about why she was perched on Mendeecees' lap. He saw several people watching the same thing. According to reports, many people were perplexed by what they were witnessing. He remains silent about it. He simply brings it up without pushing it. Additionally, the sentence is stronger because of its constraint. The more he talks, the more clear it is that he is attempting to protect himself from a story that he feels was intended to hurt him rather than reveal truths. At this point, even if both of them may be speaking the truth as they see it, viewers start to think about the unsettling prospect that just one of them is acknowledging the entire past. Because when he eventually admits that he is sorry, taking this approach and that it enhances the perception that he is disorganized, something sentimental emerges. He knows how this appears. He is aware that this will be used to portray him as challenging. However, he continues to feel that his truth is more important than that danger. And that vulnerability causes another online rift. Some claim he manipulates people's emotions. A considerable portion of them think that the truth is hidden in situations that neither of them wants to publicly reveal. And some think Tamar was the first to alter hers, hidden in between their tails. However, the most explosive moment is still to come. The one where he distances himself from the night's events and places the blame on the public narrative she crafted. And everything that follows has a new tone as a result of that turn. However, the whole matter changes from a private dispute to a public reckoning when he asserts that he was the collateral damage in her story. However, the more fundamental question is still unresolved, disregarded, and unaddressed. Why did her facts not match the time frame he provided if she really thought he had hurt her? Why did her tale portray him that way if she didn't think so at all? The upcoming events will be clouded by these questions. Those who change the tension from personal disputes can have significant public repercussions. The change takes place in silence. At first, it was nearly too quiet for everyone to hear. The story becomes more complex when he moves from recounting incidents to talking about their effects. Because up until this point, viewers had been attempting to piece together time frames and body language to determine what had transpired. However, the transcript now examines the consequences, particularly after the internet began responding to Tamar's first charges. Additionally, a single sentence that becomes increasingly prominent as more people see the film encapsulates the key message. She claimed on social media that she woke up in a pool of blood and nearly died. The words that almost perished by themselves form the story's emotional core. Since, as viewers recall, when she first stated it, the internet went berserk. Numerous accounts republished her statement, adding significant modifications, threads, theories, and condolences in the comments section. However, she was unable to reveal the identity of the other people who had been there earlier that evening. So a sinister undertone started to emerge at the same time. He admitted that they were together prior to the incident, but he made it apparent that when she went upstairs, he wasn't there. Then he repeats it in a quiet, somewhat cold voice. However, others filled in the blanks with him in the center due to the vagueness of her early public remarks. He sensed it right away. He sounds like someone who just realized the internet had selected a villain before ever hearing his side of the story when he talks about the chaos, the accusations, and the presumptions. One of the interview footage emerges at this point with a fresh interpretation. He alleges that Tamar stated she was close to passing. His description of it seems less like incredulity and more like someone who has witnessed the facts being distorted and contorted online to the point that they no longer accurately depict what actually occurred. He challenges her framing rather than accusing her of lying. Why would someone make such a bold statement without revealing who wasn't there? Why did we allow everyone to believe that he was a part of this story? When he discloses the internet erupts once again when it is revealed that someone did, in fact, offer to call an